Welcome to After the Breach podcast. We're your hosts, Jeff and Sara, and we are here with Jared Towers joining us again. He was on episode 12, 19, and 33. Talking
Good numbers.
Great numbers. Episode 12 was about type D killer whales, and 19 and 33 were about killer whale rescues. And he's joining us today to talk about a recent paper that he published along with Ingrid Visser and Vanessa Prigolini. How do you pronounce her last name? Prigolini. In the Journal of Comparative Psychology, Testing the Waters, Attempts by Wild Killer Whales to Provision People. And really looking forward to that conversation. But before we do that, before we jump in, Jared, today was a big day. You released a new Bigg's Killer Whale ID catalog.
We did, yeah. That just happened today. Like I said, it was published yesterday afternoon, so we just announced it today. That's been a long time in the making, so good to finally get that out.
The last one was 2018, is that right?
It was 2019.
2019.
But it was using data up to the end of 2018. So, yeah, it's been a few years in the works for sure.
Yeah, amazing how much has changed, how a 2019 ID catalog can feel outdated just 6 years later, how much has changed in the population.
I know. I mean, they're always like outdated as soon as they're published almost. And we managed to sneak in, I think it was T50B3, just at like the last 3 days before publication. We just knocked that little new one in there and then updated the PDF and resent it to the librarian at DFO. And so we managed to get that into the final version. But yeah, I mean, these things, there's going to be a new cast in a matter of days or weeks, and then it'll be outdated. And it's just always the way it goes.
Yeah, it's really, it is amazing how many calves have been born into this population. And yeah, it does seem like it gets outdated pretty quickly, but I'm really grateful that you guys published this new one. It looks amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just grateful for all the support. It's like, it's tough work, like putting these catalogs together and just continuing this work. We use like a fairly comprehensive methodology to like deal with photo ID data, where we're like annotating every frame and that's all getting, stamped with different metadata. So, if we ever have any questions about the data, we can essentially mine it for those purposes. That's kind of like what FinWave is built on. But prior to FinWave, we were doing that using photo mechanics. So it's just like a lot of work, and it requires not only the photographers, but, the same amount of time that people are spending in the field getting the photos. You could probably times that by 2 just, for the analysis time to process the data and make sure it all ends up in the right place. So, yeah, it's so nice to have like a solid team. My co-authors, Gary and Tasley and Danny and Mallard and then John Fordy and then my supervisor at DFO, Daniel Crows. So, and then all the supporting organizations. I mean, it's just like such a big effort, not to mention all the data contributors, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands over the years.
Well, you can see all the work that goes into it just from looking through the catalog. Yeah,
we get pretty nitpicky about the photos because there's splashes and glare and we just edit all those little things out because it's publication and it's nice to have it all clean and we also have the luxury of having many photos of most of these whales, so we can kind of pick the best one and then just convert it to grayscale and do any little edits we need to before putting it in the template or the actual family trees. But I guess the main story with the catalog though is really the growth. That's part of the reason why we define a subset of the population. And the purpose of that is that, that could really serve as a proxy perhaps for the broader West Coast transient killer whale population of Bigg's killer whales. And those are the most common individuals seen around this part of the world. So they've been growing at 2.9% per year on average for 30 years.
Wow.
Which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, we get so much use out of the catalog. I mean, it is like our Bible.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And I'm extremely honored that I had my first photo contribution.
Oh, who did you get?
124 D4 left eye patch.
Nice. Okay, that's great.
I'll get you a
Well,
bumper
thank
sticker
you.
that says that.
Well, that is my claim to fame now.
It takes a community, I tell you. You'll see that there's a few whales in there we don't even have photos of. Like, we know they exist, but we're missing an eye patch or a dorsal saddle combo, and so every little contribution helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing looking at the list of contributors. I mean, it really does. It does include so many people.
Yeah, we've kind of carried over from the last version published in 2019 to really highlight that in addition to all those mentioned in the last catalog, it's still built on their backs, plus a few more now, 6 years later. So it really is a community effort, and it's just really nice to be working on that, because I think it matters, it seems like it matters to me, and so I'm so glad that everyone else agrees.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such an invaluable resource to us. I mean, we use that. I mean, really, it's on a daily basis, multiple times a day.
I'm not on social media much, but I popped on to Facebook today actually because I found a dog on the way home. So I was trying to get, out there so people could find their dog. But catalog was the thing that was spreading like wildfire through all the, little whale communities down here in the Salish Sea and Puget Sound. People are just so excited about the catalog.
I'm glad it's circulating, and I'm glad you stopped for a dog too, sir.
Safely reunited with his people.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
This little creature I've been holding here is in the same boat. She just got picked up the other day in the Walmart parking lot, and I've been fostering her for the local JT no-kill animal shelter and until her parents come along, or perhaps they won't. And she was pretty hungry when I got her. So and she was bleeding. I think she'd been beat up by some coyotes or something. So So it's nice to be able to help look after an animal in need. And this one, she's like a Klekai, so she's a real cutie. She's like a mini husky,
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely post a link in our show notes to the new Bigg's Killer Whale ID catalog. And we'll also post a link to the paper that we're going to talk about. I'm really excited to talk about this. I really enjoyed reading it. So this is about killer whales attempting to provision people. And can you describe for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with what we're talking about, what do you mean by killer whales provisioning people?
Well, it's kind of like, if you have a cat or something, and then it comes in and it's got a bird that's half dead or fully dead, or a rat or something, and then it approaches you, drops the freshly killed item, and then stops to say, "That's for you. What are you going to do about it?" And the only difference here is that this is a wild apex predator, which to me seems much more remarkable than a domesticated feline, which people already have a relationship with. These cats don't usually offer things to people they don't know. They're usually doing it to their owner in perhaps a sense of reciprocity or gratitude or something based on knowing and having a relationship with that person in the first place. But these are wild orcas, and they're just dropping dead prey items in front of people willy-nilly, like, "Hey, I just picked this up. Do you want it?" And so we define these events in the sense that killer whales not only had to approach people, they had to approach within a body length, like a killer whale body length, and then drop the item. Mm-hmm. And in 32 out of 33 cases, I believe, or 33 out of 34 cases rather, they waited for a human response before doing something. They always paused and looked at the people to see what they would do, except one case, which that wasn't documented in. So it really goes to show that these weren't accidental. They were very conscious behaviors. They intentionally wanted to see what people would do after offering them food or items.
Yeah.
Are there any other examples of wild animals that this has been seen in that we know of?
Not very many. No, there's I've seen it before with leopard seals. And there's a famous case by that famous photographer.
Paul Newman, I think.
That's the guy. And he photographed it in Antarctica, and it kind of blew up. But leopard seals do that. I mean, they do it frequently, actually, much more frequently than killer whales do. They'll kill or maim a penguin and bring it up to a boat and just drop it next to the boat and then look at the people. And it's like, what are you going to do with that? It happened to me before, and it's also happened to a friend of mine while I was observing. But the other cases that I'm aware of are also marine mammals, and false killer whales have a reputation. Not many cases that we could find in the literature, or actually almost none in the literature. We were going to include them in this paper, but we just didn't have enough cases. There was only like 4 or 5 or something. And other than that, since we published the paper, some more people have come forward and said that bottlenose dolphins have also done this. Perhaps not always with prey, but things like seaweed or other items. So yeah, that's where we're at with, at least in the animal kingdom, that, this is not a common behavior, especially when an apex predator does it.
Sure. It's so fascinating. What sparked the idea to put together a paper for this?
It was actually Vanessa. Vanessa is a colleague and a friend, and we were talking about some of the fascinating things that killer whales do. And this was one thing that we both had in mind. One of the first things that came to mind, and it had happened to me a couple times, and it had also been happening in Mexico, where Vanessa lives. So together we kind of hatched this idea to actually do a deep dive into this study, look at what kind of patterns, if any, exist around this behavior. And of course, Ingrid came to mind because, she has a very novel relationship of sorts with orcas in New Zealand. And sure enough, when we contacted Ingrid, she said, oh yeah, like that's happened to me several times. And so together, that was really the foundation for the paper. And then I spent, the better part of probably 6 months, like diving into the literature on comparative psychology and reciprocity, just to begin to understand what might be going on here.
Mm-hmm.
So how many cases did you guys, were you able to collect, and how many populations of killer whales are we talking about?
Well, there's 34 cases in the paper that met the criteria for inclusion, and populations, I think we were at about 6 or so. I mean, we had examples from the South Pacific, the North Pacific, the North Atlantic, the South Atlantic, and since the paper was published, we've actually had a few more from different populations as well, like the Iberian orcas and also type B2s in Antarctica. And so, yeah, it's something that is shared really by the species complex on a global level, with some exceptions.
That is amazing to me. That's fascinating that this is not a cultural thing that's spreading through a population, but is a much broader phenomenon, which is pretty interesting.
It sure is.
Well, I have to ask, since you brought it up, what are the exceptions that you've noted?
Well, I find it really interesting that, having spent as much time with northern residents as I have and as my colleagues have together, that none of us have examples of this behavior happening with northern residents. I mean, our combined effort over the last, number of decades is massive. I mean, for northern residents, and it's just like these whales rarely, perhaps never, engage in such behavior. And since the paper was published, someone came forward and said, oh, southern residents have done this to me. And I said, okay, interesting. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But, you get a lot of weird reports sometimes, sure. And sometimes they're not, really legit. But, this may have been legit, I'm not sure. It's just that given that there's so much research time with northern residents and southern residents over the years, that if it does happen, that this behavior is like even rarer by comparison for their populations. And there could be some reasons for that. I mean, one is that their prey items are much smaller and they're typically sharing them with their kin. So perhaps each item is more valuable because a mammal-eating killer whale, for example, only needs to kill one large thing, and then it has surplus in a lot of cases. And so the cost of sharing goes down very quickly with mammal-eating killer whales. With fish-eating killer whales, they're catching fish that are 15, 20, 30 pounds, and they're breaking them apart and sharing them.
Right.
So prey items more valuable. Another thing is that these whales just, they may be less inclined to engage in interspecific reciprocity because they're so specialized in what they're doing that it may not make sense for them to explore new opportunities. And that's really what killer whales are doing in these cases. They're exploring consciously. They're asking questions about their environment, and doing that can really lead to adaptation. They're kind of displaying their own plasticity in a sense. Whereas resident killer whales are arguably not as plastic. They're very culturally conservative. They don't break the rules too much. And something like this could just be a real, faux pas or,
Sure.
a taboo,
Yeah.
So it makes sense for many killer whale populations, especially those that are not dietarily restricted, to engage in exploratory behavior. And those are the ones that we're seeing do this the most.
Are you seeing it mostly where they're coming up and offering marine mammals that they've killed, or is it all different types of prey?
A big wide range, yeah. We've got marine mammals. There's birds, fishes, one jellyfish. A big variety, depending on the population, part of the world they're in, and what's going on for them, and in that moment, what they have to offer. So, yeah.
I wonder too if the resistance from northern residents and southern residents to do this could potentially have anything to do with their history of interactions with us, or our interactions with them, of decades of capturing them.
Maybe. And also just being exposed to a lot of vessels, like just living in the coastal waterways. Like, I think that vessels aren't novel for them. They're like, they were raised with boats around. And so it's like, why would I go over to that boat? Whereas, you go to Antarctica, and even though Antarctica is quite busy these days, like, you could get into some situations with whales, and you get the sense that they've rarely, if ever, seen or interacted with a boat before. So it seems much more interesting for them. Like, they'll approach, they'll engage, they'll make physical contact sometimes. It's so different from what we see with residents and big killer whales in this part of the world, where they just basically ignore us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they'll look up at us and say hi and, swim past, but they're not really stopping very often.
Right.
That's like in Bremer, it feels like we're a novel, a novel item for them. They come over because there's, maybe two boats. But
have you ever
Right.
seen anything like this in your time in Bremer?
I can't think of anything where they like brought prey and then like dropped it and waited for a response. Like, they brought prey to the boat, but they didn't drop. It wouldn't have fit the criteria for this.
Right. But you've seen it here.
Yeah.
I know you've had an experience with that.
The 46Bs, who it sounds like are
Oh,
one of the most. Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
Hey, what happened, Sarah? Tell us your story.
We were up by Susha, and it was one evening, and we were the only boat on scene, and they had killed a seal, and we're prey sharing, and we were stopped and motors off, but we had a private boat come speeding through and like was aimed right for them, and I just didn't even know they were there. And I stuck our flag out the window, and I flagged this boat down, and I'm giving this backstory because it's very interesting. But I flagged the boat down, the boat stopped, went around the whales and departed. And as soon as the boat had stopped and moved out, 46B4 broke off, swam right up to the window with a big chunk of seal and dropped it at the tube, and then rolled over on his side and looked up at me.
Wow.
And then when I didn't take it, he grabbed it, he swam under the boat to the other side, dropped it right at the tube, and then rolled upside down. We have a photo of him upside down with a big chunk of seal. And then, of course, when we didn't take it, he grabbed it and then swam back to the family.
Wow, that sounds like a great example.
But it was very, very interesting experience. One of the ones that stuck with me.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Jared, of the examples that did meet the criteria, are there any that stand out to you that you want to share, or any that you
Sure.
find most
Yeah.
interesting?
Well, I can speak to at least two of them firsthand. There's been a few more that, I kind of weeded out because one was a fairly decent example, but I actually approached the whales and then they did it. So I was like, okay, I can't use that one in the paper, but so I didn't. But yeah, on a couple of occasions, still both with the 46s, the animals of the 46 lineage anyways. One of them was T46C2s, and she was by herself, and she just swam right up to the boat with a freshly killed harbor seal pup and dropped it right next to the tube, and then swam away, and we just watched it slowly sinking right underneath us. And within about 10 or 15 seconds, she was back, and she just slowly picked it up in her mouth and then swam off and started ripping it apart. And it was so funny because we were awestruck. We weren't saying anything. We were just like, what is going on here? And then Tasley, she was like, did that just happen? It's like, I think we were all thinking that, like, what is happening right now? Is this even real? So that was one of them. And the other one was a few years before that, with some ancient murrelets that some of the T46Bs were chasing around and capturing and killing and tormenting. And yeah, I had a little GoPro in the water, and one of them swam up and stopped right in front of the GoPro and opened up its mouth, and a dead ancient murrelet popped out right in front of the camera, like right underneath where I was standing. And then it just like paused, looked, waited, and then picked it up and swam away. Yeah.
All of these, I think everybody would probably just sit there thinking, like, did this just happen?
I know, I was thinking that.
Yeah. I didn't even know it happened until I got home, because it was right underneath me, but the water was like a little bit wavy. Mm-hmm. And so I knew something was going on. I just couldn't quite make out what was going on. And then I looked at the footage when I got in. I was like, oh my God.
That is incredible. So
yeah.
It sounds like the 46Bs have a lot of examples of this.
They do. Yeah, there's more too of those guys.
Yeah, I've never had this exact, nothing that would meet the criteria happen. I did have, this was not that long ago. It was probably a month or so ago. I did have 65A5 was on his own, and he had a seal in his mouth, but the seal was still alive, and he circled our boat. But he didn't let it go because it was still alive, circled the boat twice, and then moved on and killed it.
But the next day, he did that to us again, and he brought the live seal like up to the back of the boat, dropped it, and it, was kind of stunned. It was a little seal, and then swam off, and then came back and grabbed it. But it didn't seem like he was like waiting for us to, I don't know, it was weird. Like,
yeah.
And I did have an experience this summer, and I emailed you about this, Jared. I call it my anti-provisioning experience.
What happened?
The 46B1s and 46C2 had killed a few harbor porpoise, and we were watching them prey share, and we could see the lungs from the harbor porpoise floating at the surface. And this happens frequently after a harbor porpoise hunt. They leave the lungs, and after the whales have moved on, we always go and check them out and show passengers and point them out as they're floating in the water.
Yeah.
And this happened, and we saw the lungs, and we were watching them prey share, and then they moved on. They were almost a half a mile away, and they were done prey sharing. And so we went up and we were looking at the lungs, and there was more than just lungs there. There was a lot of the carcass that was in there, and it was barely floating along with the lungs. And we were looking at it, and all of a sudden the whales came back, and we could see them through the water. They were underneath the carcass, and they grabbed it and swam off with it. So it was like they left that, and then I always felt like, oh, they saw us checking it out, and they're like, no, you guys can't have that.
I don't want it, but you can't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the anti-provisioning event. I like that.
So, like, with all these events, what do you think is going on? What are their possible motivations? What are they doing?
Well, I think that there's a bunch of things happening. I mean, one is that killer whales have evolved to have these really large brains, and so they're really clever. And I think that sets them up for, conducting experiments, you might say, even though that sounds a little wild. But honestly, I mean, you could just break that down to the conscious pursuit of knowledge. Really, they're using their brains to ask questions and get answers from other things in their environment. And it sounds extraordinary, but it's really not. I think there's more animals that do that. They just don't do it in this way. I think the cost of sharing is low because and why killer whales do this, perhaps more than, most other creatures, especially terrestrial predators. Like, when was the last time like a tiger or a lion brought over like a piece of an antelope it killed or something and offered it to people? Like, it just doesn't happen. But
that would be a little scary.
It would be, but this should be scary, and it's not, right? And so I think that because we are creatures of such different environments or biomes, there's still that mystery there, not only for us, but also for them. We don't have like a really long history of competing with killer whales or harming each other. I mean, we certainly have harmed killer whales as a human species. Like, people have killed them before in the wild and stuff, but it's not as ingrained in who they are as it is for the animals that we actually share the land with, right? And we have these either predator-prey based relationships with those animals or competitive. And we really kind of don't have that with killer whales. So it kind of sets us up for, just approaching each other and interacting. As I mentioned, the cost of sharing is low. And there's not many creatures on the planet that kill prey that is large relative to their own body size. And the exception would be humans and killer whales. No, that's it. There's the odd cougar taking down a llama or a lion taking down a giraffe or something, or wolves taking down a buffalo or something. But really, there's not many examples of that. And so what that means is that killer whales often have prey surplus, so they can do whatever they want with it. They can give it away, or they can mediate relationships or explore relationships in their environment with that, or they can just forget about it and swim off. Yeah, so I think that's really kind of some underlying mechanisms. But yeah, I think that proximate causes are really kind of coming down to, things that may border on anthropomorphizing, but I'm not scared of that. I think that we can't really understand who killer whales are and what they're all about without risking a bit of anthropomorphizing, like they are animals with emotions and thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this study, more than anything, really highlights that they have theory of mind, which up until recently was only thought to be a human thing. It was like what set us apart from other animals.
Right.
Oh, we have theory of mind, we're special. We're not special. Like, there's a lot of animals that have it, and killer whales are definitely one of them. And what it means is that basically the animal has the ability to realize that there's another creature with its own thoughts and processes, like life processes. And that's kind of the basis of theory of mind. So, the fact that they're actually stopping and like waiting to see what people would do, that kind of highlights that they're conscious of the fact that we're also conscious.
It's fascinating.
It's amazing. And I now can't help but think, what would be the proper response to them that would make them happy? Because I would love to make whales
probably
happy.
Would vary potentially vary individual to individual, right? Or instance to instance.
Yeah, I just wonder if they do this and they drop it and they look and we do nothing. Are they like, wow, they're lame? Or maybe they're not. Maybe they're not as smart as we thought they were.
Yeah, what a dummy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the right response is. I mean, it's funny when things go on social media and then you get like the whole world's response to whatever's going on. And this was like a viral story. I mean, it went around the world. I mean, it actually started in New Zealand and with India. And I mean, in Canada, I didn't expect it to take off because we have all these strict rules about the way we look at whales and interact with them. And I thought, oh yeah, CBC is going to be on order from Ottawa not to run with this. And so, not surprisingly, CBC was the last outlet on the planet to pick it up, which was kind of funny because they picked it up in like September and we published in June. And when they finally came forward, I was like, oh, you guys are actually showing up for this? But, we did like CNN and everything, the BBC and whatever. But, all the outlets that aren't under the thumb of the Canadian government and kind of can say what they want. But, and so you naturally get everyone's comments and everyone's like, oh, why didn't you accept it? And I was like, well, I didn't respond naturally to the comments because there's just like thousands of them. But still, I'm thinking like, yeah, what is the right response? I don't know. It's context dependent, and
Sure.
also it's really not my job to respond. Like
Yeah.
like I wasn't trying to interact in the first place, so I'm just like, just let me be shocked for a moment, before I do anything.
Right. Yeah. People always have funny responses on the internet for sure.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah,
Yeah, it would be interesting to know. I mean, we'll never know like what it is that they would want as a response.
yeah. I think they're just curious. I don't know if there is a right response. It might just be like, what is he going to do?
Yeah.
What are they going to do? I mean, and that's part of the reason why, like, we put that paragraph about Machiavellianism in the discussion, because killer whales have the potential to be Macs, and they're known to be deceptive in captivity,
Sure.
not only with people. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have read or listened to that book called Beneath the Surface, I think it's called. And
By
there's a lot of there's a lot of examples in there of killer whales being a bit deceptive and then harming people in captivity, which isn't surprising because they're in captivity in the first place. But they also do it with birds. They'll like use some of their fish that they get fed by the trainers to like bait a bird, like an egret or a night heron that hangs out next to the pool. And when the bird goes for the fish, then the killer whale grabs the bird and kills it.
Yeah.
For fun. And so there could be that going on. It's like, well, if this person grabs this food, like maybe I'll grab the person. Like, I don't know. It hasn't happened yet, and maybe it never will. But if it does, it'll probably be in Norway or La Ventana. Probably La Ventana. I think that's, if there's going to be harm in the water on a person from a killer whale, I got my money on La Ventana. And I think it's going to happen within the next decade.
Okay.
Wow.
Good prediction. No, not a good prediction, but we'll note that down.
Yeah.
We're talking about predictions before we started recording on what our predictions for the next year are. So
okay.
We'll chalk that up to the next decade.
All right. Yeah, we got 10 years to see what happens. I hope it doesn't happen. But
yeah.
But
it's interesting that you say that, because I mean, when I read this paper, it kind of sparked some other conversations, and you brought this up a little bit. It's like when a killer whale approaches us, like, we're in awe usually, or I'm in awe, right? But really, like, this is an apex predator, and they're very close, and they could easily, like, obviously I'm on a boat, but if we met in the water, or if it happened, I know in the paper there were a couple instances where people were in the water, like, we would not feel the same way if it was like a bear or a lion or, any of these like terrestrial apex, predators, but very different. And it's just kind of interesting to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very capable of harming us, and they choose not to. And that's great. But I don't think we should get complacent about it.
Right.
Absolutely. But that's present in my mind anytime they do get close, and you're in awe. But if it was a lion, the awe might come later, but I think you'd be more scared.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll post a link to the paper, and it is definitely a great experience reading. It was, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm glad that Journal of Comparative Psychology thought it was a good fit. I had no idea what to expect, and just, I had written it for them, and if they didn't accept it, I wasn't quite sure where I would pitch it next, but they seemed to like it, and they even, they did the press release, and they kind of were behind that, and yeah, it's the most publicly impactful paper ever to get published in the journal, looking from the altmetric score, which is kind of what that tells you. So it was cool. Next step for me, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if anybody ever cites it, because it's kind of an out there paper. It's kind of like, it's just like a bit off the cuff and a bit different than the kind of research that most killer whale researchers are doing, and I felt it was still important to get that story out there, but it's like kind of doesn't really fit into the narrative of a lot of science. So it'll be interesting to see how, where, and when it gets cited and by whom. And yeah, I think it's a lasting story, but we may not realize its importance for years to come. I'm not sure.
I think of all the and I've read a lot of papers, but it was one of, if not the most thought-provoking paper I've read ever, or at least in the last several years. So
Cool.
yeah, just a very, very thought-provoking paper.
Nice to hear.
So what is there anything else you want to share about what's going on at Bay Cetology or FinWave or anything else?
Sure. Off the top of my head, we talked about the catalog a little bit that was published today. That was, again, that's just a huge effort from not only Bay Cetology, but a bunch of other organizations. But a lot of that's really reliant on FinWave. I find myself talking about FinWave a lot lately because it is. Thank you. Yeah, it's such a big undertaking. I mean, we have people working full time on that and different aspects of it, from development to just data management. And that's just a big killer whale page. I mean, there's other pages that are not getting as much use, but it's really up to the people wanting to manage the data on their populations, decide how much they use it. I mean, it's basically like an open access free software for anyone who does cetacean or dorsal fin photo ID. So interesting though. I will say that we've got two main challenges with FinWave, and one is funding. I mean, moving forward, it's a very expensive thing to run, and we don't have like stable long-term, source for that. So we're kind of making it up as we go. Mm-hmm. But two is that like there's this onboarding process, which was kind of prohibitive, like with the big killer whale data, we backloaded like a decade worth of data, like 250,000 ID photos annotated. And that's a lot of work. So if someone wants to, because most people doing cetacean photo ID have been doing it now for years. And so if they wanted to transfer their entire data set to FinWave, which is probably just going to keep on happening more and more as time goes on. But it's a big undertaking to like transfer that data and get it on there. So that's one of our challenges. And I guess the third one is that people think it's something it's not. People want to like upload a photo and then see the prediction. I'm like, this is not Happy Whale, you guys. Like, yeah, we can do that, but like this is a data management system which takes everything you would naturally do with photo ID data, and you would kind of have like 7 screens open and be pulling your hair out, and you're so focused you can't even answer the phone or look at a text because you'll lose your train of thought. Now it all happens in one place online, and the whole team can work on it from anywhere in the world as long as they have an internet connection, and everyone can contribute to it and see the data. So it's like it's just a whole new way of doing it, which is condensed, semi-automated, utilizes AI, and is as open as the population administrator wants it to be. So yeah, so I think those are all good things going for it, but it's really like going to be interesting to see how things keep on evolving at FinWave.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it and having it around, because it is, I know I get so behind in like uploading my own encounters, but it's so handy to have too. Cool.
Yeah, I think it's the way of the future. We couldn't keep doing things the way we were doing them. It's like because we probably run the biggest killer whale photo ID data set in the world, and like it just wasn't feasible. I'm like, and it's kind of funny to see how other people deal with photo ID. It's like they usually don't have a lot of funding in place to manage it, and therefore they can't prioritize it. But it is the backbone of everything we know about almost every cetacean population. So you get a lot of scrappy photo ID management systems which are not stable, transferable, or sustainable. That's why I kind of like, I don't know what the future holds for those people. When we had this killer whale symposium in February earlier this year, that was one of the main things that came up. This is just killer whales. Keep in mind that people are photo IDing dolphins and everything else. Right. But most people said the photo ID upkeep is almost impossible. And it's just like, yep, that's the same old story. So we have to build this software and get people using it. So yeah.
Well, we'll link to FinWave as well, and
all right.
It's timely. We're recording this on Giving Tuesday, so at least down here, I don't know if Giving Tuesday is international, but we'll do a plug for FinWave as well. Is there a way people can donate to support
Yeah, people can donate via the PayPal on the Bay Cetology website and
Sweet.
make contributions. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
I think Giving Tuesday is international, but Canada and Canadians, they just give veganism as much of the culture in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I find that in the U.S. there's perhaps a bit more disposable income, and it's like there's this beautiful culture of giving, and in Canada it certainly happens, but I don't think it happens at the same level.
All right. Well, we'll link that in the show notes. So if anybody uses FinWave or wants to use FinWave or wants to contribute, make it, we'll make it easy.
Awesome. Jared, thank you so much for joining us again. It's always amazing talking to you.
Thanks for having me, you guys. And I hope you have a good rest of the year, and the best wishes for 2026 coming up in less than a month.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe out there.
All right.
That was cool.
Really, really great. Well, it's always great having Jared on, but really great to chat with him about that paper, because I read it when it came out and it was just so fascinating and like I said, thought-provoking.
And it did go viral. It was in media all over the world.
Yep.
Yeah, very thought-provoking. And I'm wondering now that he mentioned the examples of killer whales in captivity using fish to bait birds and then killing birds, maybe I don't want to react if they do this in the wild.
No, I mean, because that was in the paper as well. Like, it was in the discussion, and it was just an interesting, we don't really think about it. Because like I said, when a killer whale approaches you, at least for me, most of the time, I'm just like awestruck still after 30 years of, working around them, just awestruck that there's this giant creature, sentient, really. Like, when you look at them, someone's home. And I don't have the fear that I probably should, like we would if it was any other predator, like the black bear that kind of bluff charged us, me and Monica and Jason and Brooke this summer at Telegraph Cove. That kind of appeared out of nowhere. Like the instant panic that wells up in you is like instinctual, but we don't have that with arguably this very like smart, intelligent apex predator.
Well, and even people in the water.
Yeah.
When that happens, don't seem to have that reaction. It might go through their mind, but you would react much differently if you were approached by like a cougar or a lion.
Or even a shark.
Or a shark, yeah, you'd be freaking out.
So yeah, and like Jared said, it's like they choose. They're choosing not to, but they're so smart, and
it doesn't take a lot of time.
Such individualistic that, who's to say that one of them isn't doing this because, well, going to test the waters, And
it doesn't take a lot of time being around killer whales to see that, to see that someone's home and to see that they are individuals and that they have different personalities.
Absolutely.
We are still running some tours. We're pretty much year round at this point, but we have our schedule out for 2026.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So, book some trips, come on out.
Jeff and I will be running trips.
We will be running trips.
And then I'll be gone, but
then you'll be gone, but then you'll be back and I'll be gone. And then we'll both be back and we'll be here for 2026.
Here's hoping.
Come on out. Let us know that you're a podcast listener when you book.
Yeah. And thanks for being patient with us, guys. I know that we've had a few weeks where we haven't released episodes. I've been sick with pneumonia I've been sick with pneumonia for what feels like forever, but I don't know. I'm going on 6 weeks now.
And I think that's about the last episode that we posted.
Probably.
Not really related. We get a couple chunks of time during the year where our schedule gets a little bit difficult for us to maintain some consistency. We'll get better either at communicating when those are going to be, or just plowing through them.
But thanks for sticking with us.
We really appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate all the feedback that we get, the emails.
Even if we're bad about responding to them, I see them and I will respond. It might take me a while, but I will respond. Yeah, we do read every comment, every email, and we do really appreciate it, even though we may not respond to all of them. Yeah. So looking forward to the next upcoming episodes. And in the meantime, stay safe out there.